Back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast. On this next segment, a bit more of a positive approach from the Giants owner than what we just talked about with the Cowboys owner in Jerry Jones. And this time around, for the New York Giants, the season hasn't turned out very great so far through 7 weeks. Probably not to a lot of people's surprise, though. I don't think a lot of people were pretty confident in the Giants going into this year, but it felt like this season was going to be a make or break season, at least in my opinion, because of how the offseason went with Hard Knocks and the draft and the quarterback speculation, around the draft and thinking maybe that the Giants were interested in moving on from Daniel Jones. And also, of course, the situation with Saquon and the disparity, the visibly upset John Mara during Hard Knocks, where he talked about the idea of Saquon, going elsewhere and especially ending up in Philly, how he would be pretty distraught, and that he was, obviously, with how everything turned out, and now he has to live with that, seeing Saquon twice a year in his own division, the player that he drafted so high overall. It felt like this year something had to happen to really buy into this project that they were trying to build upon, right? But it could have meant that this organization also could have gone in a different direction in terms of head coach and general manager, right? If things didn't go well, Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen would probably be looked upon as the guys responsible for this season not working out. But not to John Mara, because he dismissed all of that speculation about Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen recently in what he had to say about them. There was an event, I think, over the last couple of days where he was actually, owner John Mara, at a screening for a film about I think a documentary of sorts about his late great father, Willington Mara. There was a screening for a film, and obviously John Mara was there and everything like that. And they asked him about Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen and their futures, right, with the season not going the way that they planned. And he said, obviously, we're all very disappointed with where we are right now, but I'm going to say one thing. We are not making any changes this season, and I do not anticipate making any changes in the offseason either. And he said that in regards to, the question about Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. Basically, also pointing out the fact that in the past, it might have been his lack of patience from his own estimation that he's had with recent head coaches and front office members as a reason why, he wants to give a vote of confidence to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, because he's felt that in the past he's gone too quickly to move on from head coach or from general manager. He wants to kind of try and break that cycle and have some sort of stability and security going forward with the same guys in power, basically driving the ship, if you will, which makes sense. It's pretty adamant that he is taking that route. And to be fair to John Mara and Brian Daboll and even Joe Schoen, Joe Schoen and Daboll were both hired before the 2022-2023 season, and they ended up going to the divisional round, right? They got destroyed by the Eagles, but they went on the road to the Vikings. They beat the Vikings on the road, and surprised a lot of people. Daniel Jones had a pretty decent season. Then the following year was a complete 180 because they finished 6-11 with Daniel Jones injured, and now they're starting off another season not too well at 2-5. So we've seen some good, but we've seen, I think, mostly bad after that as well. But so it's been one overachieving season and another bad season, and this year again it's not looking so great, like I said. But this was always going to take time, I guess, to be fair to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, just based on how the Giants have looked over the last few seasons. So I can understand John Mara wanted to be a bit more patient, and you look at organizations elsewhere and how quickly they move on from head coaches, from office members, from players even, first overall picks, quarterbacks, things of that nature. It's always, everybody always wants the results very quickly, right? Everybody wants to be the Texans, everybody wants to be the Bears, the Commanders, really more so this year, right? With Jaden Daniels, and all offseason you find the right general manager, you find the right offensive coordinator, you get the right guys in, and just from one day to the other, you become a contender right away. it's great that it happened to the Commanders. It's awesome that it happened to the Texans, but it's not the case for everybody. You see teams still trying to figure things out. Teams still trying to find, the right quarterback, the right coach, trying to get the offensive line right and things like that, trying to fix their defense. All these things like that are more common than miraculously being a one-hit wonder from along those lines, right? Just one day you're not really there, the next day, boom, you're a contender, right? Because you did everything right. It's very unlikely that it all happens each and every year. For most organizations, it doesn't, for a bunch of reasons that I just listed off. So I can admire the fact that their owner John Mara is willing to swallow this season and just swallow his pride, and maybe you're gonna get beat a few more times this season, right? But it's all for the greater good. You're trying to build a stable, sort of consistent thing going on here, right? You don't want to, for a year or two, be under one management, be under one head coach, unless it's like very bad, right? But with Brian Daboll, I think he's done a decent enough job to take this offense, this roster where it is today. And Joe Schoen, for as much as the situation with Saquon and Daniel Jones and the extension given to Daniel Jones over Saquon was as fireable, as egregious as a thing you could do. I don't care if it is the quarterback. You sign, you keep Saquon, especially with Daniel Jones being your quarterback. But to be fair to both of them, they've done a pretty good job of building up everywhere else. The offensive line has looked better than it has in the past with Andrew Thomas, with John Runyon as well coming over in free agency. They were able to bring in Brian Burns, draft Kayvon Thibodeau. Dexter Lawrence is a beast as well. So their defensive line is looking pretty great. They drafted Malik Neighbors, who looks like a great receiver out of LSU once again. So they have some pieces and they have done things well, but big picture, you kind of hope that it'd be better, but it's hard to do that with some of the decisions you've taken with the quarterback. But, whatever the reason may be, Mara has essentially just confirmed that these two are going to be the leading forces going forward, and that's admirable, to stay consistent to that. And hopefully through this consistency it gets better. But one thing Mara didn't say or commit to was the idea of Daniel Jones. He didn't really mention it. I'm pretty sure he was asked about it at the screening, but he failed to commit to Daniel Jones alongside Daboll and Joe Schoen. So I think that pretty much says it all, right? Maybe they don't try to aggressively try and move on from Daniel Jones, but I'm sure that'll be one of the priorities this offseason. If things really go south and you're committing to Daboll and you're committing to Joe Schoen, that quarterback you'd have to imagine being at the top of the Giants list, especially already if their owner John Mara is already not really overly convinced by him. It seems like he has made his mind up about him pretty much already. So I don't know how it'll work exactly. I don't have the information ahead of me in terms of contract and financial reasons and stipulations and things like that, but I think it goes far enough to show how John Mara failing to mention Daniel Jones alongside these guys, pretty much shows us how he feels about Daniel Jones and how he's probably going to look to find somebody else. And now, whether that be through the draft or free agents, that might be out there looking for new teams and new contracts and things like that, will be interesting. The quarterback market is always crazy each and every offseason, and it looks like now the Giants are going to be for real in trying to explore that market a lot more convincingly, because this offseason, there was a lot they could have done. They decided to go out and get, the pass rushers, the offensive linemen, draft Malik Neighbors, right? Not draft the quarterback so early. So they're still building this thing, and I think next season now, they've positioned themselves better to try and attack the quarterback position a lot more. Even if you have to keep Daniel Jones one more year, if you go out and get a quarterback, it'll make the situation a lot better knowing that you have a guy that you feel confident in. If Daniel Jones really can't be the guy or can't carry this organization any further, you have a guy then hopefully next year that you believe in. So that's the situation now. It looks like 2 out of the 3 guys that we pointed out before a couple months ago are going to be here to stay. It looks like Daniel Jones might be the odd man out, depending on how the rest of the season goes, of course, right? Could he turn it around completely? I guess it is possible, but it hasn't looked like it for really his time being here as a New York Giants quarterback. So we'll see where the Giants go from here. You know, they have the Steelers coming up this upcoming Monday on Monday Night Football. So hopefully, you know, we'll see if they can play better. But for right now, we're going to talk about one last topic here that I have on today's show. I wanted to talk about the running backs and how what one executive said recently to a reporter kind of exemplifies everything that the running backs are doing this season, and that how they're making a comeback as well and showing their importance to everybody in 2024. I thought it was important to point it out. So that'll be our last segment here on the show once we return right after this.